Look, the Pacific Islands Forum in the Cook Islands at the minute, New Zealand hasn't attended, PNG hasn't attended, many other places, leaders, PNG, I think Solomon Islands also hasn't attended. We have. You see the Prime Minister turning up in those, colourful shirts every single day. He's committed $350 million effectively for climate change in the Pacific. Do you think this is the best use of the money, and how do you think Australians will react to it, given we are in a very serious cost of living crisis and interest rates just went up for the 30th time this week?
I think there will be a lot of eye-rolling domestically about it. Sharri, I accept that Australia's got a serious job of work to do building relations with Pacific Island countries, and that takes money. I think practical cooperation is necessary. I don't know how much of that $350 million is ever going to sort of find its way to improve the lives of Pacific Islanders today, which have some of the poorest economic indicators in the world around healthcare, infrastructure, education, employment. There's so much more that we could be doing of a practical nature to help individual Pacific Islanders. And then I would like to see a larger Australian defence presence, more ships and aircraft in the region, Australian Army engineers doing good practical works to assist remote island communities. We've done all this stuff in the past, but promises of big money on climate, which may or may not have an impact decades into the future, I think is a kind of a feel-good way to spend money, but not one which is really focused on the practical needs of Pacific Islanders now. And Australians might be a bit cynical about that, given how hard the cost of living issues are for so many people in our own country.
Look, you were in a previous role, the Deputy at Australia's Defence Department. So I just want to also ask you about the war on Hamas, the Israel war on Hamas at the moment, and the government's response to it. In my personal view, I think Albanese has been quite weak on the response. When he's asked about anti-Semitism, he turns his answer into a question. He starts speaking about Islamophobia. He's called for a humanitarian pause for a couple of days in the fighting. He keeps expressing concern about the way Israel is responding, trying to destroy Hamas, when Israel couldn't be doing more to try and save innocent lives. We even saw a report out of the BBC today where, an Israeli official called someone in Gaza who was in an apartment block, stayed on the phone until he'd evacuated his entire apartment block and the two apartment blocks next to him before they were bombing it. So my question is, do you think the Albanese government understands truly the nature of war and just how much effort Israel goes into abiding by international law?
I don't think the government understands, and I don't think they want to know, Sharri. I think they're in their comfort zone calling for ceasefires and, bemoaning the risk of intolerance here in Australia without ever getting to the specifics of what's going on. The Israeli Defence Force has applied ceasefires. They've applied a number of them for periods of 4 or 5 hours every day to give people the opportunity to evacuate down to the south of Gaza. Our government doesn't appear to acknowledge that that is a reality of what's going on. They don't appear ever to acknowledge that, in fact, the Israeli Defence Force is going to extreme lengths to save civilian lives and to not target civilians. And another thing our government doesn't do is that it fails to acknowledge that Hamas command and control facilities for their fighters are actually located under hospitals, under schools, under refugee camps, through these hundreds of kilometres of tunnels which have been built. So I think the government is content to sort of keep its commentary at a very feel-good level without actually engaging in some of the really challenging aspects of what's going on, and completely failing to recognise that the Israeli Defence Force is doing a huge amount of work to not target civilians in the course of fighting against Hamas terrorists.